50 years later, you'd be sitting down to talk about it. What do you think it is about this show that has kept people interested in it?
It just showed that, women are capable. Women can do things.
Behind the glamorous smiles and iconic red posters, the cast of Charlie's Angels was haunted by an unbelievable streak of tragedy. From a death that was completely overshadowed, to a shocking accident that changed Hollywood forever, and a star who was mistakenly pronounced dead to the world. This is the heartbreaking, untold story of what really happened to the cast of Charlie's Angels after the cameras stopped rolling. Farrah Fawcett as Jill Monroe. When Charlie's Angels premiered in 1976, one cast member quickly stood out from the rest. Farrah Fawcett, who played Jill Monroe, became an overnight sensation, and before long, she was everywhere. Her famous red swimsuit poster sold more than 12 million copies, making it one of the best-selling posters of all time and turning her into one of the biggest celebrities of the 1970s. But while everything appeared perfect from the outside, life behind the scenes was becoming increasingly complicated. Long filming days that often stretched to 14 hours, combined with growing frustration over a contract she reportedly felt didn't match the success she was bringing to the show, left her wondering if staying was really the right choice. So, after just one season, she made a decision that shocked Hollywood. She walked away from the biggest television show in America. Now, this decision didn't go over well. The producers sued her for breach of contract. Many executives believed she had thrown away her career, and critics openly questioned whether she'd ever find success again. For a while, it seemed like they might be right. She struggled to get roles, and it seemed her career was over. But Farrah wasn't willing to let that be the end of her story. Instead of trying to look for roles based on her previous fame, she challenged herself with more serious roles, determined to prove she was more than just a pretty face. Over the years, she earned widespread praise for powerful performances in movies like The Burning Bed and Small Sacrifices. The same people who once doubted her began to see her in a completely different light. But just when it seemed she had finally built the career she always wanted, life took another unexpected turn. In 2006, Farrah was diagnosed with a rare form of cancer. Rather than keeping her battle private, she made the courageous decision to document her journey in the documentary Farrah's Story. By sharing her treatment and the difficult moments that came with it, she hoped her experience would give strength to others facing the same fight. Sadly, Farrah passed away on June 25, 2009, at the age of 62. But in one of the saddest twists of fate, her death happened just hours before Michael Jackson's passing. As the world focused on the shocking news surrounding the king of pop, Farrah's death received far less attention than many people felt she deserved. Farrah's passing broke hearts around the world, but the actress who stepped in after her would later find herself at the center of one of the most unsettling and confusing media blunders in Hollywood history. Tanya Roberts as Julie Rogers. When Tanya Roberts joined Charlie's Angels in the 1980s, the producers were hoping a new angel would bring fresh excitement to the show. Tanya stepped into the role of Julie Rogers for the 5th and final season. And although she was only there for 1 year, the show helped introduce her to a much bigger audience. For a while, it seemed Tanya had everything working for her. But away from Hollywood, life had other plans. When her husband, screenwriter Barry Roberts, became seriously ill, Tanya chose to put her career on hold so she could care for him herself. She spent years by his side until he passed away in 2006, putting family ahead of fame. After losing Barry, Tanya lived a much quieter life and stayed mostly out of the spotlight. Then, during the Christmas holidays in 2020, she collapsed while walking her dogs.
Goodbye tonight to a TV angel. Tanya Roberts, who starred in the final season of Charlie's Angels, passed away at Cedars-Sinai Medical Center this afternoon. She collapsed while walking her dogs
and was rushed to a hospital in Los Angeles, where she was placed in critical condition. Now, just a few days later, Tanya's publicist mistakenly announced that she had passed away. And within hours, TV stations aired tributes, newspapers published obituaries, and fans began mourning her. But something interesting happened. The next day, her family revealed that Tanya was actually still alive and remained on life support. The news brought relief and hope to many fans, but sadly, this hope didn't last. On January 4th, 2021, Tanya Roberts passed away at the age of 65 from complications caused by a severe infection. Even today, her passing is remembered as one of the most unusual moments in Hollywood news. David Doyle as John Bosley. If there was one person who held Charlie's Angels together, it was David Doyle. As John Bosley, he was Charlie's trusted right-hand man, delivering every new assignment while keeping the Angels focused. Alongside Charlie's voice, Doyle was the only cast member to appear in all 137 episodes, making him one of the show's most familiar faces. To viewers, Bosley always seemed calm, funny, and dependable. But away from the cameras, David Doyle was dealing with challenges most fans never knew about. Years before joining the series, he lost his first wife, Rachel Hawkins, in 1968. Left to raise their young daughter, he had to balance life as a single father while continuing to build his acting career. He eventually found love again with his second wife, Ann Kless, but life never really slowed down. During the 5 years Charlie's Angels was on the air, Doyle was also living with type 2 diabetes. Long days on set weren't easy, but his co-stars often described him as the steady presence who kept everyone grounded. While the show was making headlines for cast changes, contract disputes, and behind-the-scenes drama, Doyle quietly stayed out of the spotlight and focused on the job. Sadly, years of health problems eventually caught up with him. On February 26, 1997, David Doyle passed away from a heart attack in Los Angeles at the age of 67. John Forsythe as the voice of Charles Townsend. Now, when most people think about Charlie's Angels, they usually picture the three angels racing into danger and solving impossible cases. But there was another star of the show that audiences heard every single week without ever seeing his face, and that was John Forsythe. As the voice of Charlie Townsend, he became one of the most recognizable voices on television. Every episode began with Charlie calling in over that famous speakerphone, and before long, his calm, confident voice had become just as iconic as the Angels themselves. Now, what many fans didn't realize was that John rarely stepped onto the Angels set. Instead, he recorded his lines separately in a recording studio, often finishing his work in just a few minutes before heading home. Even though he was one of the most important parts of the show, he spent very little time with the rest of the cast. Away from television, though, life wasn't always easy. In 1979, John underwent major quadruple bypass heart surgery after doctors discovered serious heart problems. It was a frightening experience, but after recovering, he quietly returned to work without drawing much attention to what he had been through. He went on to enjoy another hugely successful chapter of his career when he starred as Blake Carrington in Dynasty, proving that his career was far from over. However, as the years passed, his health gradually began to decline. He battled colorectal cancer along with other age-related illnesses, all while continuing to keep his private life out of the headlines. Sadly, on April 1st, 2010, John Forsythe passed away at the age of 92 from complications of pneumonia after his long battle with cancer. Even though audiences never saw Charlie's face, his voice became one of the most unforgettable parts of Charlie's Angels.
The actor died late Thursday of complications from pneumonia after a year-long battle with cancer. Forsythe is best known for playing the voice of Charlie on the television series Charlie's Angels.
And decades later, it's still impossible to imagine the show without it. Charlie's voice became one of the most unforgettable parts of the show. But the next guest cast was keeping a secret that left everyone unsettled. Lee Quentin Jones as Dan Miller. Now, if you watched the Season 2 episode Target Angels, you probably remember the tough, no-nonsense character Dan Miller. The role was played by Lee Quentin Jones, better known as Lee Quentin L.Q. Jones, one of those actors whose face almost everyone recognized, even if they couldn't quite remember his name. For more than 60 years, he became one of Hollywood's favorite tough guys, appearing in classic westerns like The Wild Bunch and Pat Garrett and Billy the Kid. In fact, Whenever directors needed someone who could convincingly play a cowboy, sheriff, or outlaw, Lee Quentin Jones was usually one of the first people they called. But his journey to Hollywood wasn't as straightforward as it might seem. Born Eustace Ellis McQueen Jr. in Texas, he later adopted the professional name Lee Quentin L.Q. Jones after playing a character with that name early in his career. The name stuck, and before long, it became the one audiences knew him by. And while acting made him famous, it certainly wasn't his only talent. In 1975, he surprised a lot of people by writing and directing the science fiction film A Boy and His Dog. The movie wasn't a big hit when it first came out, but over the years, it built a loyal following and eventually became a cult classic. However, as Hollywood changed, so did the opportunities available to actors like him. Westerns slowly disappeared from television and movie screens, and the kinds of roles that had built his career became much harder to find. Like many actors from that era, he had to work even harder to stay active in an industry that was always chasing the next generation of stars. At the same time, life away from the cameras wasn't always easy either. His marriage ended in divorce, and he quietly focused on raising his children while continuing to take whatever work came his way. As the years went by, Lee Quentin Jones also watched many of his closest friends and longtime co-stars pass away. Little by little, the generation that helped define Hollywood's classic westerns began to disappear, leaving him as one of the last remaining links to that unforgettable era. Eventually, he stepped away from acting and settled into a quieter life in the Hollywood Hills. Away from the spotlight, he enjoyed his retirement until old age finally caught up with him. On July 9, 2022, Lee Quentin Jones passed away peacefully from natural causes at the age of 94, bringing to a close the remarkable career of one of Hollywood's last true Western legends. Soon Taek-oh as General Kim. Soon Taek-oh appeared in two memorable episodes of Charlie's Angels, playing different characters in Angels in Chains and An Angel's Trail. Although he wasn't a series regular, he was one of those actors who always left an impression. But behind his memorable performances was a journey that was anything but easy. Born in Korea during a difficult time in the country's history, Soon Taek-oh later moved to the United States to continue his education, studying at both the University of Southern California and UCLA before deciding to pursue acting. Now, making it in Hollywood was already tough, but for an Asian actor in the 1970s, it was even harder. Good roles were limited, and many studios kept offering the same stereotypical characters. Rather than accept that, Soon Taek-oh decided to help change the industry. In 1965, he co-founded East West Players, the first Asian-American theater company in the United States. His goal was to create better opportunities for Asian actors and prove they could play far more than the narrow roles Hollywood kept giving them. Looking back, that decision helped pave the way for many performers who came after him. Before long, Soon Taek-oh stepped away from Hollywood and spent time teaching acting in Korea, passing his experience on to a new generation. Sadly, his final years were overshadowed by Alzheimer's disease, which slowly robbed him of the memories he had spent a lifetime creating. He passed away on April 4, 2018, at the age of 85, leaving behind a legacy that extended far beyond the screen. Soon Taek-oh fought the studios openly, but the next cast lived in absolute terror, forced to hide his true identity for decades out of fear that one single leak would instantly destroy his career. Dick Sargent as Eddie Sprague. Dick Sargent appeared in 3 episodes of Charlie's Angels, including Angels in Springtime and Angels on Campus. But long before those guest appearances, most viewers already knew him as Darren Stevens from the hit sitcom Bewitched. This role made him a television star, and from the outside, it looked like he was living the perfect Hollywood life. But behind the scenes, he was living with a secret he was afraid could cost him everything. Now, you have to remember what Hollywood was like in those days. Many actors believed that coming out as gay could end their careers. Studios worried about public image, and actors often felt they had no choice but to hide who they really were. And Dick Sargent was one of them. For years, he kept his private life out of the spotlight and focused on his work. But living this way came at a cost. Friends later said the pressure of hiding such a big part of his life took a heavy emotional toll. While audiences saw a warm, friendly television star, few realized the burden he was carrying behind the scenes. Everything changed in October 1991 when Dick publicly came out as a gay man. At the time, it was a courageous step, especially for someone as well known as he was. Rather than staying quiet, he began speaking out for LGBTQ+ rights and worked with organizations that supported young people facing rejection, bullying, and discrimination. Sadly, not long after finally being able to live openly, Dick was diagnosed with prostate cancer. He faced the illness with remarkable strength, but his health continued to decline. On July 8, 1994, Dick Sargent passed away at the age of 64, leaving behind not only a memorable television career, but also a legacy of courage that reached far beyond the screen. Lee Delano as Joe Fairgate. Lee Delano appeared in the two-part Season 2 premiere of Charlie's Angels, Angels on Ice, where he played the intimidating mobster Joe Fairgate. With his deep voice and tough guy image, he was one of those actors audiences instantly recognized. Even if you couldn't remember his name, you'd probably seen him somewhere before. Over the years, Lee built a career playing gangsters, detectives, police officers, and other authority figures. He popped up in hit shows like Star Trek, Mission, Impossible, and Kojak, and became one of Hollywood's most reliable character actors. If a production needed someone who looked believable in a tough role, Lee was often the one who got the call. But here's the part many people never saw. Unlike the lead stars who signed long contracts and became household names, character actors like Lee had to keep starting over. As soon as one job ended, it was back to auditioning and hoping another role would come along. There was no guarantee of a steady paycheck, so staying in Hollywood for more than 40 years was an achievement all by itself. Even when the work became difficult to find, Lee kept showing up and giving every role everything he had. This dedication earned him the respect of directors and fellow actors, even if he never became a major celebrity. Eventually, though, television changed. By the 1990s, many of the kinds of roles Lee was known for had become less common. Rather than chase fewer opportunities, he quietly stepped away from acting and enjoyed a private life in California. Lee Delano passed away on October 14, 2017, at the age of 86. He may never have been the biggest star in Hollywood, but for decades, he was one of the dependable faces who helped make so many classic television shows unforgettable. Dennis Cole as Carl Campbell. Dennis Cole appeared in 3 episodes of Charlie's Angels, but many fans remember him for more than just his guest appearances. While working on the show, he fell in love with lead actress Jaclyn Smith, and before long, the two became one of Hollywood's most talked-about couples. Dennis was handsome, charismatic, and popular, while Jaclyn was one of the biggest stars of the era. And to many, it looked as though they were living the Hollywood dream. Of course, Dennis had been building this dream long before Charlie's Angels. He started out as a stuntman before moving into acting, and his rugged good looks soon landed him leading roles in shows like Felony Squad and later The Young and the Restless. For years, his career continued to grow, and life seemed to be falling perfectly into place. But then, everything changed in December 1991. Dennis's 30-year-old son, Joe Cole, was visiting a friend in Venice, California, when armed intruders broke into the house. During the robbery, Joe tragically lost his life. His death shocked the entire family and made headlines across the country. And it didn't end there. The people responsible were never convicted, leaving Dennis with questions that would never be answered. Friends later said he was never quite the same after losing his son. As time went on, he gradually stepped away from Hollywood and devoted much of his energy to speaking out against violence. He also supported other parents who had experienced the heartbreaking loss of a child, hoping his own story could help them through their darkest moments. Dennis spent the rest of his life living quietly in Florida, far from the spotlight he once knew.
Then he moved to Florida and he became a real estate agent, and he sadly passed away at 69 in 2009 from kidney failure.
Sadly, on December 15, 2009, he passed away from kidney failure at the age of 69. For many people, He'll always be remembered as a talented actor. But those who knew his story also remember a father who carried an unimaginable loss with remarkable strength. While Dennis Cole's greatest struggle played out in public, the next cast took a vault of personal secrets to his grave after 6 decades in the spotlight. Cesar Romero as Elton Radcliffe. When Cesar Romero appeared in Charlie's Angels as the smooth-talking Elton Radcliffe in the Season 2 episode, Angels in Paradise, he was already one of the biggest names in Hollywood. By then, he had spent decades entertaining audiences and had built a career that very few actors could match. He first became famous as a charming leading man in the 1930s, then introduced himself to a whole new generation as the unforgettable Joker in the 1960s television series Batman. Years later, he found success all over again as Peter Stavros on Falcon Crest. No matter the decade, Cesar always seemed to find a way to stay in the spotlight. But what's really interesting is that, despite being so famous, he kept his personal life almost completely private. He worked with some of the biggest stars in Hollywood and was a popular face at industry events, yet he rarely spoke about his life away from the cameras. He never married, stayed away from gossip, and preferred to let his work do the talking. In a town where almost everyone's personal life became headline news, Cesar managed to keep his out of the spotlight. Sadly, his health began to decline in the early 1990s. Toward the end of 1993, he was hospitalized with bronchitis and pneumonia. As doctors treated those illnesses, his condition became more serious after he developed blood clots. On January 1, 1994, Cesar Romero passed away in Santa Monica, California, at the age of 86. Although he's no longer with us, his work continues to entertain new generations of viewers. Whether you remember him as the Joker, Peter Stavros, or his appearance on Charlie's Angels, his legacy has truly stood the test of time. Ray Milland as Oliver Barrows. When Ray Milland appeared in Charlie's Angels as retired cat burglar Oliver Barrows in the Season 4 episode One of Our Angels is Missing, he wasn't just another guest star. He was already one of the biggest stars from Hollywood's golden age. Born in Wales, Ray worked his way up to become one of Paramount Pictures' leading actors during the early 30s. Then, in 1945, he delivered the performance that changed his career forever, winning the Academy Award for Best Actor for The Lost Weekend. He later starred in unforgettable films like Alfred Hitchcock's Dial M for Murder, and by then, his place in Hollywood history was already secure. But despite all this success, Ray was never someone who enjoyed the spotlight away from the cameras. He preferred a quiet life and stayed away from the gossip that often surrounded movie stars. He was married to his wife, Muriel Weber, for more than 50 years, and together they built a stable life while Hollywood around them continued to change. Of course, as the years went by, the big leading role gigs reduced. This was something many actors from his generation had to face. But instead of retiring, Ray simply adjusted. He started taking television roles, including guest appearances on shows like Charlie's Angels. It wasn't because he had lost his talent. He simply loved acting and wanted to keep doing what he enjoyed. Unfortunately, Ray's health began to decline as he was diagnosed with lung cancer. He chose to keep his illness private, staying away from public attention as his condition gradually worsened. Then, on March 10, 1986, he passed away at Torrance Memorial Hospital in California at the age of 79. Even today, Ray Milland is remembered as one of the great actors of Hollywood's golden age. His career lasted for decades, and the performances he left behind continue to inspire movie lovers around the world. Vic Morrow as Harry Stearns. Now, if you watched the Season 1 episode Angels as Strings, you might remember the tough and determined Harry Stearns. The role was played by Vic Morrow, an actor who had built a reputation for playing strong, fearless characters long before he appeared on Charlie's Angels. In fact, by the time he joined the show, Vic was already one of the most respected actors in Hollywood when it came to action and war dramas. His journey started far from the bright lights of Hollywood. Born in the Bronx, New York, Vic left high school at a young age and joined the United States Navy. After his military service, he discovered a love for acting, and before long, he began landing roles in film and television. Many people first noticed him in the 1955 film Blackboard Jungle, but the role that truly made him a household name was when he starred as Sergeant Chip Saunders in the hit television series Combat, where he played a brave World War II squad leader. The show was a huge success, and Vic quickly became known for bringing grit, emotion, and realism to every performance. Of course, this dedication followed him throughout his career. Directors loved working with him because he believed every scene should feel as real as possible. Whether he was playing a soldier, a detective, or a villain, Vic always gave everything he had. Away from the cameras, he was also the father of actress Jennifer Jason Leigh, who would later go on to have a successful career of her own. Sadly, that same commitment to realism would place him at the center of one of Hollywood's darkest tragedies. In July 1982, while filming Twilight Zone the movie, a terrible accident happened during a nighttime action scene involving a helicopter and special effects. Vic and two young child actors lost their lives.
Attempted to recreate the terror and the carnage of the hell that was Vietnam. And then, as the crew watched in horror early this morning, the make-believe dissolved, and actor Vic Morrow and two Vietnamese children were killed.
Shocking the entertainment world and leading to years of investigations and major changes to movie set safety rules. Even today, Vic Morrow is remembered for much more than the tragedy that ended his life. He left behind decades of memorable performances, and his story also serves as a lasting reminder of why safety on film sets can never be taken for granted. Aaron Spelling and Ben Roberts, the powerhouse creators behind the curtain. Now, before we wrap up, it's only fair that we talk about the two men who made Charlie's Angels possible in the first place. While the cast became the faces viewers recognized every week, Aaron Spelling and Ben Roberts were the creative minds working behind the scenes to bring the show to life. Ben Roberts was the co-creator of the series. He helped develop the idea, shape the stories, and build the world that millions of viewers fell in love with. Aaron Spelling, on the other hand, was the executive producer. He oversaw the production, worked closely with the network, and helped turn Charlie's Angels into one of the biggest television hits of the 1970s. Together, they created a show that became a worldwide success and remains popular decades later. Of course, this kind of success didn't come without pressure. Ben Roberts spent years dealing with script deadlines, production challenges, cast changes, and the constant pressure to keep the show fresh. Those who knew him said he was deeply committed to his work, but the demands of television were relentless. Sadly, his health declined in the years that followed, and on May 12, 1984, he passed away at the age of 68. Aaron Spelling's career continued to reach even greater heights. After Charlie's Angels, he went on to produce hit shows like Dynasty, Beverly Hills, 90210, and Melrose Place, becoming one of the most successful television producers in Hollywood history. But behind that incredible success was a demanding career that rarely slowed down. In his later years, he battled heart problems and cancer before suffering a major stroke in June 2006. He passed away a few days later at the age of 83. Today, it's easy to see that Charlie's Angels wouldn't have become the television classic we know without Aaron Spelling and Ben Roberts. The actors may have brought the characters to life, but these two men built the foundation that made the show possible, and their impact on television is still being felt today. When you look back at Charlie's Angels, it's easy to remember the fancy hairstyles, the action, and the unforgettable stars. But as we've seen, there was so much more happening behind the scenes. Many of the people who brought this iconic series to life were quietly dealing with heartbreaking loss, serious health problems, and personal struggles that viewers never knew about. Despite all that, they kept showing up and gave us performances that are still remembered decades later. Now, if you've never watched Charlie's Angels, it's definitely worth going back and seeing it for yourself. And this time, don't just watch it as another classic television show. Watch it knowing the stories behind the people on your screen. Knowing what they went through gives every episode a whole new meaning and an even greater appreciation for the talent, dedication, and resilience they brought to their work. Their lives remind us that fame doesn't protect anyone from heartbreak, loss, or life's toughest challenges. But through it all, they left behind something that has stood the test of time. Their performances continue to entertain new generations, and their stories continue to remind us why they'll always be remembered as true television legends. Let us know in the comments which cast member's story touched you the most, and tell us who your favorite angel was growing up. Don't forget to like this video, hit the subscribe button, and turn on notifications so you never miss another deep dive.